Today's class is Build Your CMA using the Code of Ethics 11.1, and it is taught by Steve Presbury, and it's part of our Raising the Bar course. Just to remind you, and I think most of you have been on this class, but in case there's someone who hasn't, I need to just go through the rules as set out by the Utah Division of Real Estate. In order to get credit, and this class does have 2 hours of CE credit, you must have your camera on and your full name must be displayed, and you must be in front of your camera for the duration of the class. You will be given 3 keywords during this class, and I will share in the chat a Google link to a form that you will fill out and be able to complete at the end of the class. If you could get that done today, that would be great. And please, just look at the form before you rush to fill it in. It really is very helpful if you can put your name in capitals and also your license number. And remember to put zeros, not O's, because then it's much easier for us to copy and paste that information in order to give you credit. If you miss a keyword, shoot me a private text. We don't give them out again. And I believe that is everything. So enjoy the class. Feel free to chip in. I know Steve likes interaction, or you can put a question or make a comment in the chat, and I will keep on top of that. So I'll hand over to Steve.
Thanks, Leslie. Welcome everybody this morning. Hope you're all having a good day. I broke my glasses last week. Well, they broke, so I've got my old ones on at the moment. Everything's a little bit blurred, but we should be okay to get through this. So if I say something a little bit odd, then you'll know that's because I can't quite see properly. Now, let's see now if we can just get this thing going. Oh, is this not working? Let's see. Here we go. All right. So just to reminders of the rules. This is a CE class, and real estate division asks us to make sure you got your full name on the screen, have your video turned on, be in attendance for the whole class, be seen and engaged for the duration of the class, and get the 3 keywords. To remind me to give the keywords, I've actually now got them on screen. It'll know they'll pop up, and then I'll be able to give you the keywords. So, Raising the Bar, these are 12 lesson course that Presidio produced for all of our agents. They're good reminders, but particularly for new agents, they're great start in the business. We have a great quote here from our principal broker, Jennifer Yo, who is a great broker, and she's the one that came up with this platform of Raising the Bar. And this is what she says: doing the right thing in every area of our jobs only makes the industry better as a whole. What a great quote that is. Staying committed to that helps us all have a strong, resilient, long-lasting career, and will bring more referrals and business to you than you can ever imagine. That's why Presidio, at Presidio, we all pledge to raise the bar. So that's what we're doing today. Hopefully we can raise the bar just a smidgen from wherever we are and be a better realtor, a better professional at the end of this class. I found this really interesting quote from Albert Einstein. I thought it was a good one to share, so I thought I'd share this with you. Everything that exists in your life does so because of 2 things: something you did or something you didn't do. I thought it was quite a good quote, so I thought I'd share that with you. Certainly in this industry, everything happens because we either do something or we don't do something. The consequences or the rewards are for both. So let's have a look at this title. Build your CMA using the Code of Ethics 11.1. And we're going to break this down and see if we can figure out how we can be better in our ethics as a realtor in using the CMAs in our work. We will just nip into the website where we usually create these CMAs, which is the utahrealestate.com. For those who have not done it before, I'll just show you where that is. We'll talk a bit about the summary of the article, 11.1. Purpose of the CMA, who needs a CMA, the advantages for buyers and sellers, fundamental principles and comparables, the characteristics of comparables and number of comparables needed. And finally, we'll just little look at the different types of houses that sometimes can be a bit confusing, particularly if we've not long been in the industry. So let's first of all just look at this site, which is www.utahrealestate.com. We're all familiar with that site. And if we go there, at the top of that menu bar, you'll see that CMA. That's where we're going to go to build a CMA, Comparative Market Analysis Report. You'll see a sheet come up like this, which you've all seen who have done this before. And basically, that's where we'll go to create our CMAs. And lots of different fields in there we can fill in. Just have a quick look at those. Location. On that top section, you'll see that whatever you put into your fields for searching, it'll bring you up a number. You know, in this case, there were 6 matches. There's also a little tab there that shows you the view the map. You can also go to the map and you can, you know, do a section that you want to cover geographically wise, and you can view the map there. And you can also look at the search criteria that you've created for the CMA, which will be there. If you go down the page a little further, you'll see these other 4 areas that you'll be able to put in your fields of refining search, which is listing, price, date, and site. And this is a pretty comprehensive form, lots of options in there, and it certainly is helpful to us as realtors as we build a CMA using this platform. Any general questions on utilizing the utahrealestate.com website to build a CMA? And incidentally, I do like everybody to be comfortable and relaxed today. If you've got anything on your mind, whether it's a question or a comment or a thought, or maybe something to add to, or even something maybe to correct, please just chime in, just unmute and say, hey, Steve, I've got a thought on that. And we'd love to hear you. I love to hear people's stories and experiences and thoughts as we go through this lesson material. All right. So when you've finally done that report, you will find you can bring up a summary of your comparative report. You'll see your own subject property there, and however many other properties you've used to compare that with, they'll be listed alongside or below your reports from the utahrealestate.com site. So it's quite a comprehensive site. It's good to use, and I'm sure all of you on this class have probably used it. If there is somebody who's not used it before, it's definitely worth tucking in there and having a go. So let's get to our first keyword. I'm a little bit early actually, but we'll still do it anyway. First keyword will be comparative. Can you see that? Comparative. C-O-M-P-A-R-A-T-I-V-E. Comparative. That will be our first keyword for this class. Anybody got any questions on utilizing or using the utahrealestate.com site to build a CMA? Has anybody used any other method to build a CMA? Oh, good, that's all I know actually, just on the one side.
Steve, this is Cindy. I've used the cloud CMA.
Oh, tell us about that, Cindy. Tell us about that.
It's linked right into the Utah State Real Estate page there, and you can, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can click on Cloud CMA, and it will pull up a really nice presentation format for you to pull together all of your comparables. You can either plug in your MSL, is that right? MSL, sorry. MLS number, sorry. And then, or else it can pull them from this system as well. So there's really 2 ways to do it. This way that you're teaching, and then this other way as well. And learned how to do that from taking some classes through the division.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll have to have a go at that. I've not tried that out yet, but do you think it's a pretty good way of building a CMA?
Yeah, it's nice, but I haven't used the way that you're teaching, so I'm curious to see how this one turns out.
Can I just add one thing there? Because the Cloud CMA does look very pretty. The format is much better than the CMA that you get through this, but I have noticed discrepancies before. So one thing that I will do is the way that Stephen's going to be teaching this today, I would absolutely recommend doing that first. And then you will see some differences with that Cloud CMA because it's all automated, similar to like what Zillow would do, right? They just kind of pull in records that are there. And I've made adjustments. So if I want a really pretty looking Cloud CMA to give to my client, I'll take the information that I do off this comparative, because you really look through and drill down on the numbers in this, you know the comps and you can speak to that to your clients. And then if you want to present it pretty, then put that information into Cloud CMA. Yeah,
that's Brandon, that's what I've been doing as well, is pulling the comps from the system and then plugging them into the cloud to make them look really pretty. But yeah, there's been some quirky things that have happened with the Cloud CMA as well too. So
that's perfect. Oh, they're probably still, ironing out the bugs maybe, as it's a fairly new platform. That's very helpful, Cindy and Brandon, sharing that with us. That's great. So for those of you who have not used the Cloud CMA, maybe that's something we should look at and see if we can, as Brandon say, make a more attractive comparative report for our clients. Okay, let's move on. I think that keyword's been up there long enough now. Some people say I don't put it up there long enough, so there we have it. Let's look at this article 11.1, and it's only a very small section, but there's quite a bit of juice in here that we can start to dissect and see if we can figure out how we can be better in our profession as real estate agents. So it's the National Association of Realtors that produced the Code of Ethics, and we all know that that's a mandatory course that we take in our 2-year commitment to real estate. Every time we renew our license, we do need to go through the Code of Ethics. This is 11.1. First part of this says the services which realtors provide to their clients and customers shall conform to the standards of practice and competence which are reasonably expected in the specific real estate disciplines in which they are engaged, specifically residential real estate brokerage, real property management, commercial and industrial real estate brokerage, land brokerage, real estate appraisal, real estate counseling, real estate syndication, real estate auction, and international real estate. So ultimately what we're saying there is, as we get tucked into this, our ethics are based on reasonably expected in specific disciplines in which we engage in, and they cover residential, management, commercial, industrial, appraisal, syndication, auction, and international. Any questions on that part of that first part of the article? Very good. Goes on to say, realtors shall not undertake to provide specialized professional services concerning a type of property or service that is outside their field of competence, unless they engage the assistance of one who is competent on such types of property or service, or unless the facts are fully disclosed to the client. Any persons engaged to provide such assistance shall be so identified to the client, and their contribution to the assignment should be set forth. So basically what we're saying here is we do not provide specialized services outside of our field of competence. We can be assisted by one who is competent. If so, this needs to be fully disclosed. Any comments or thoughts on that part of the article? Great. Okay. So now let's have a look at this and see if we can break it down a touch in this next part. When realtors prepare opinions of real property value or price, they must 1. Be knowledgeable about the type of property being valued. 2. Have access to the information and resources necessary to formulate an accurate opinion. And 3, comes up as 1. 3, be familiar with the area where the subject property is located unless lack of these is unless lack of any of these is disclosed to the party requesting the opinion in advance. So let's have a little look how this goes. So basically, I suppose we're a bit like a walking encyclopedia in our area of expertise. You go to a big library there, that's what people are coming to us for. We should be a source of information in the area that we are professional and licensed to give advice for. We need to be knowledgeable, and we need to have access to resources that can help us give more information to our clients, and of course be familiar with the property. Any questions on that slide? Okay, so let's look at this. When an opinion of value or price is prepared other than in pursuit of a listing or to assist a potential purchaser in formulating a purchase offer, the opinion shall include the following unless the party requested the opinion requires a specific type of report or different data set. There's about 10 pieces to this. Identification of the subject property, of course. The date prepared, it is time sensitive. The defined value or price. Limiting conditions, including statements of purpose and intended uses. Any present or contemplated interest, including the possibility of representing the seller, landlord, or buyers or tenants. Basis for the opinion, including applicable market data. If the opinion is not an appraisal, a statement to that effect. Disclosure of whether and when a physical inspection of the property's exterior was conducted. And again, disclosure whether and when a physical inspection of the property's interior was conducted. Disclosure of whether the realtor has any conflicts of interest. Any thoughts or comments on those 10 pieces of that puzzle? Okay. Last time that was amended was 1 of 14. So now let's have a look at this. The article and standards make clear the realtors must be competent in preparing opinions of price. Competency is gained through experience and affiliation with another realtor who has experience and knowledge. No one comes into the business competent. We all find ourselves involved in new waters, doing things in real estate we have not done before. However, agents must recognize when the level of competence is required beyond their abilities and act accordingly. Again, these requirements are incumbent on realtor appraisers as well as realtor brokers. So let's look at that. Sometimes we have something that comes on our doorstep and we're thinking, I'm not exactly too sure what the answer of this is. And we all have access to other realtors. We should be humble enough to ask questions and see if we can figure out the answers before we give answers to our clients. Pay attention and learn from other experienced and ethical realtors. Always ask for help in areas that you are learning in or new to. It's far better to say to a client, you know, I'm actually not too sure about the answer to that question. Let me come back to you. and then go and talk to someone who you know can give you some help, so that when you give advice, it is much more accurate than, you know, trying to give an answer that may not be exactly as it should be. Has anybody got any experience or stories or thoughts that we can share where you've had a situation and you've had to do this? You know, you looked at it, you thought, you know, I kind of think this is the right answer, but maybe I better check this out rather than give my client an answer that I'm not exactly or particularly sure about. Got any questions on that? You got any stories on that? Let's have a story on that. Must be someone out there who's had a story on that. I know certainly in the early days when Leslie Ann and I were working, we'd have lots of questions, and sometimes we'd find it difficult to get a hold of our broker, because obviously that's where we go to, and we weren't getting the answer quick enough, and there was a feeling, or let's just give them an answer and give the client the thoughts that we have on this. But you're far better to wait. Just get back to the client and say, hey, I'm still working on that question, not quite figured it out yet, but I shall come back to you. Anybody got any thoughts or comments on that? Okay. All right, let's move along. Oh, I've already got the next word here. I've gone pretty fast on this one. Here we go. So the second key word in this class will be competency. Competency. There it is. COMPTENCY. Competency. That'll be our second one. Competency is another C word by the looks of it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this. CMAs and appraisals are not the same. A CMA reflects a licensed real estate broker's analysis of similar, recently sold properties, and in some cases, where applicable, can include properties currently under contract or active on the market to derive an indication of the probable sale of a particular property. Notice that we are looking there. Notice the wording similar, okay? Similar property. You never find a property exactly the same. And notice that we're using the word probable sale. So we're never going to be saying to our seller, you'll definitely sell it for this price. We're going to look at some options here. We're going to use some tools that will give us some comparatives of other properties on the market or that have sold, hopefully those that have sold within the last 90 days. But we can only give them a possible, probable price that they may be able to sell their house for. It's important to understand that. It's not an appraisal, should never be referred to one as an appraisal. So we should always just make sure we say this is a comparable. It's basically an analysis we've done of the current market. That's how we've come up with our price, but this is not an appraisal. There it is. This is simply a comparative market analysis report, which can vary in results from one realtor to another. And certainly if you're new in this business, when you're working with the CMAs, it's probably good to work with another realtor and say, hey, would you mind running a CMA on this home for me to see if I'm, anywhere close? And that's always a good idea in the early days so that you can make sure you're in the right neck of the woods price-wise. Any thoughts or comments on that slide? Okay, another little point on this then. So the CMA relies on general market trends compiled by a realtor. So just think about that. General market trends, general. We're kind of general, we're looking at trends, and we're not a professional coming up with the price of a home. We're a realtor. We do have some tools which are available, on the Utah real estate website that help us, but we're giving a general result from our findings. And we're usually using sold, but we can use some active properties that are available on the MLS. Very different, the appraisal. An appraisal is created by a certified professional who's an appraiser, who is licensed to value properties for money lending organizations to qualify for a loan. So we're very different, and it's important we make sure that our clients understand what we're doing is very different to what an appraiser would do. Any thoughts or comments or stories on this slide? I've got a quiet bunch today, haven't I? It's probably all that rain that came yesterday.
I think sometime the certified professional, you use the term loosely on a few of them that I've dealt with.
Yeah, could you elaborate on that, Michael, for us? That's a very good point. That's a very good point to raise.
Well, it's like the people who do the I forgot my brain just left me. People who do the check on the property to see what's wrong with it.
The inspectors?
Yeah, the inspectors, the inspection. Some of them, like the appraisers, they don't seem to get it. And if they're not from the area, they don't as well. Because I live in Twilla, born and reared in Twilla. And we have that problem with some appraisers that really don't know the area, and the prices are screwed up because of it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And often the realtor will have a much better understanding of the local market where they live. You know, they've seen houses being sold over many years, and they can see a very real trend than an appraiser that's coming in from outside that's just looking, you know, at the bare facts. And that's why it's good. And I think we covered this in one of our earlier lessons, either last week, the week before. It's good if we can share the information we have, leave it available for an appraiser when they go into an appraiser home, because we may have some information that may be useful to them. But ultimately, they are the licensed property valuers. But you're right, sometimes they don't quite get it right. So whatever information we can give is and can be helpful to them. But thanks for sharing that, Michael. Any other thoughts or comments on how different these two approaches are to evaluating a home? We have an appraiser friend of ours who, and sometimes we've asked him questions just to help us when we're talking about property value, but they have some very different tools that are available to them than we have as realtors. Our tools are very basic, basically, but they have some other tools which they have to use, which also enables them to fall in or within the boundaries of keeping the value of property or real estate in a balanced format, because they can't over or under appraise properties, because that would send the market a little bit queer, if you see what I mean, and that causes a bigger problem down the track. So they have some other tools and some other rules that they have to fall within when they are appraising properties. Any other comments or thoughts on that slide? Okay, let's see if we can tuck into this a bit deeper then. So one of the things here that we need to be honing in and tightly on is to be knowledgeable about the type of property that's being valued. And I think most of us on this class is work with, generally speaking, residential properties, but there are lots of different types of residential properties. There'll be some of us that maybe are focused on the high-end sort of single family homes. Others might be focused on the low end, you know, the condos and the townhouses and whatnot, and we'll have different experiences in different areas as to how those properties are moving. So many agents have experience in pricing residential property, but not complex commercial or special purpose property. Do you have anybody on this course that is licensed or has experience with selling commercial property? Brandon? Yeah, I'm always glad to have you on board, Brandon. Can you tell us roughly, in your opinion, what the main difference is, or what the main principal differences are when you're working with value, when you're working on residential compared to commercial?
Well, residential, you're going to use comparative values, whereas with commercial, I mean, I'm broad stroking this, but commercial is really about determining income, and they use cap rates, which is the value divided by the income that's coming on an annualized basis. They also will look at, depending if it's multifamily or if it's a retail strip or if it's an office space, there's different factors that they'll look at. They'll also pull from a much broader area for commercial properties. You're not going to be usually within a mile. You're going to be, I mean, I've had properties that were appraised that were pulling in like type businesses from Heber City to Tooele and some in Ogden. And I had fights with the appraiser about it, saying that's not significant. Tooele's market is completely separate than Heber City. And so, you know, the other thing that I've observed in the transactions I've done with commercial, it's a much more open discussion with the appraisers and the lender. And it's not so much, hey, you can't talk to each other, you're really discussing it. So the last one I went through right now that's closing up here quickly, I spent probably 3 hours with the appraiser, working out not only comparables, but going and getting additional information on rent rolls and why does this particular retail strip offer an 8% cap when, you know, everything else is 6% cap rates. So it's a completely different approach that the appraiser is using from residential to commercial.
Yeah, and also, Brandon, tell us about the time. You know, I mean, we can do a residential property in 30 days at ease, but it's a whole different ballgame when it comes to commercial property, the time.
Yeah, on all sides. I mean, typically you'll start out with a letter of intent, and then there's a period of time where they're going to be doing some additional research. Then they'll put a contract together. Then they'll go back and forth. So this last one, I listed it last March. It's supposed to close by March 31st, but we went under contract in December. And so you're talking, you know, and that's actually relatively quick, because a lot of times you'll have a due diligence period and letter of intent that'll sometimes be 90 days before you'll even have the contract put in. Now, this is a little bit different market right now, so it is still moving a little bit more quickly, but the lending process itself will take 60 days. You could have phase 1 environmental reviews, phase 2. So the phase 1 will just look at, hey, has there been any photo developers, laundromats, car or gasoline, anything that would have impacted the environment around the area? And if they determine that it does, then they do a phase 2, which they bring in another company that will come in, do a drill samples of soil. It's much more expensive for both the seller and the buyer, and a longer time.
Yeah, much longer time. Sometimes you can be talking, you know, a few years. You know, it's once you get into the commercial game, all the periods are longer. And also you've got a much smaller market of buyers. You know, ultimately you're looking at a very bespoke area when you get into the commercial platform. And that's why most brokerages will have someone that is proficient and experienced just looking at commercial property. If you have a lead come in that's commercial, you're far better to maybe use the person in your brokerage that has the experience of working on a commercial platform, and then just take a referral fee. Obviously, Brandon gets it; he can do it because he's already doing that, which is great. So, any other questions?
I still partner with Robin.
You do? Okay.
I do. I mean, I've had quite a bit of experience in commercial, and I was a commercial lender. But even on this last one, she and I have a different kind of agreement. But you know, I'll bring her in. Just well, I guess that's the other thing. You list on the Wasatch Front MLS, Park City, whatever the different MLSs, but for commercial investors, they're really looking on CoStar and LoopNet, which is a completely different listing system, and it's much more expensive.
Yeah, and you're often working with a group of people as the seller rather than a single kind of owner, aren't you?
Yeah, and there's a lot of 1031 exchanges that'll come in to play as well.
Yeah, it's much more complex, and that's why it takes much longer. And you've got more people to agree on everything, both on the selling and the buying. There's just more people to come together to agree when you move into a commercial platform.
Can I just say something as well? I know there are agents from Presidio on here and agents that are not, but if you are with Presidio, as Brandon said, we do have Robin Roberts, who is our commercial broker. And so you totally, I always tell new agents that join Presidio, if someone approaches you and say, I want to buy commercial property, or I've been asked to sell one, work with Robin and she can help you do that. In fact, you need to work with her to do that. So that's very just a point that we share with, make sure agents understand that.
Good. Thank you, Leslie Ann. Let's just see what we've got here. The agent will be at a distinct disadvantage in attempting to form a price opinion on a single family home. That's obviously referring to the top piece there. Agents should ask themselves, do I understand this segment of the market and how it behaves? That's really what we should be asking ourselves. And if we don't understand it, we've got to get the help. And there's always help. Whichever brokerage we're in, there's always someone that can help us get that extra help that is needed to come up with a proper value. Let's continue on the next part of this section. Have access to information and resources necessary to formulate an accurate opinion. So the agent must be able to consult relevant resources in forming an opinion about the property price, such as the MLS and the public records. Agents should ask themselves what types of data and information are required to price this property. I do have access to that data and information. Any comments on that slide? Okay, I think that's pretty straightforward. Okay, be familiar with the area where the subject property is located. So this requirement speaks to the need for geographical competence. Ultimately, the agent's knowledge of the marketplace in which the property is located. Michael referenced this earlier. It's important that we understand the trends within the geographical location that we're looking at. Each geographic market has its own quirks and nuances, and agents can easily find themselves out of their area of competence. So very important that we get that little section right. Agents should ask themselves, do I have a geographical competency in this area? If a realtor lacks any of the preceding aspects of competence, he or she must disclose this in advance to the buyer or seller who has requested the price opinion. The buyer or seller can then make an informed decision about whether to have the realtor proceed with the opinion. So I like the use of the word opinion here. It is an opinion, and you know, there's 20 realtors on this class today. If we all took a property and we try to give an evaluation of that property, we'd probably end up with 20 different opinions. They may all be in the right direction, which would be hopefully correct, but they would slightly be different because we're all different people. But it is an opinion we're offering. It's not an exact workings. Any comments on that slide? Okay, this next little section. Note that Article 11 states that realtors can engage the assistance of one who is competent. when they undertake to provide services outside their own field of competence. In a situation like this, the realtor must also identify the person or persons so engaged and their specific contribution to the client. I should have asked any questions on that last one. Any comments on that one? Okay, let's look at the purpose of the CMA. The purpose of the CMA is to establish an accurate range of value for a property that a seller wishes to sell or a buyer wishes to buy. That's the purpose. An accurate range is one that reflects market conditions at the time and place of the transaction. There we go. After an accurate property value range has been determined, the CMA is used to help sellers identify an asking price and the buyers identify an offer price. In other words, the CMA provides an objective, market-driven starting point for pricing properties. Okay, so let's just talk about this for a little bit. Obviously, whether we're representing the, as a listing agent, the seller, or as a buyer's agent, the buyer, the CMA is of great value because obviously if we are representing the buyer, we need to make sure that we consider, or our clients consider that property to be worth the market that hopefully they are selling at. Has anybody had any experiences where they have, on either side, whether they've been the listing agent or the buyer's agent, where they have found a large discrepancy between the price of a property, and they have to kind of bridge that gap, and how they've done that? Must be someone out there who's had that experience.
Are you referring to like what you're finding on the CMA and what your client wants to price it at, or amongst the CMA?
Oh yeah. So say for instance, you're representing the buyer's agent, you're the buyer's agent representing the buyer, and they question the price of the house. They want the house, but they put an offer in that's a little bit lower than the asking price, and you present that to the sellers, and they say, "Oh no, we've got our own CMA that pulls it in at the right price," and you've got a completely different set of values, and it's a reasonable amount, the discrepancy. Have you had that happen, Christy, where you've had to work that out, where there might be, it could be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 discrepancy between the two, and they've got their CMA report and you've got yours, and they're both done reasonably well, but we've come up with a different result?
Yeah, well, I have a client right now that is under contract on a house, and when I did the CMA on that, I thought the house was overpriced. When we went to go put in an offer, I was like, frankly, it's overpriced, but with this market, what do you want to do? So we ended up asking at listing price, and we got it because we didn't have as many contingencies. But I was nervous for the appraisal, and the appraisal came in well over what we offered, and I was shocked. I was like, I want to know what houses. So I haven't talked to my buyers yet, but I'm planning to talk to them and say, can I just see like what their comparables were, just because I didn't expect it to come in as high as it did.
Right, obviously, because your buyers have paid for that appraisal, they should be able to see it and should be able to share it with you, and that'll be good. It is a really strange market at the moment, simply because there's not enough inventory out there, and so we have got a few crazy things going on prices. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Christy. Has anybody else had the other challenge where you've had to somehow bridge the gap and work with the other agent because they're convinced that the price is where it is, and you're looking at it and you're quite a bit different to their price, and how you bridge that?
Steve?
Yes.
I use the CMA. I run a CMA for myself, for my house, and to appeal on my property tax. So it's a different, from working with the buyer or seller, but it's for myself.
Okay. And was your price coming out at about the same price the house was going to be valued at?
Not lately, but a few years ago, it works good for me. When the price of our house is not, go up that much. Yeah, a few years ago, yes, but not now.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other comments or thoughts on that slide? Okay.
And I think that when we run comps, if there is a discrepancy, we have to make sure that we're comparing like for like. And I always explain to buyers or sellers that when we do a CMA, it is quite basic compared to an appraisal, and that we work within much smaller parameters than an appraiser. But it is important. So on a CMA, it doesn't say how well the house is updated. It doesn't talk about if the yard is finished. It's just very basic parameters that we work within. So if you could have two properties that appear on a CMA to be identical, but they're not, because one may not have any fencing, may not have a landscape yard, may be totally outdated, even though the age of the house is maybe older. They could totally have completely have updated the home. So it's very important that we use like for like, that we don't have a beat up house with no landscaping, using then houses that are beautiful homes as comparables and vice versa. And so it's important that we use comparables, as the word suggests, that they are comparable in those areas.
Yeah, exactly. And often when you're just looking at figures on a property which can be identical for two different properties, the actual quality of the home can be very different.
Yes, and I found that sometimes when there has been a discrepancy and you compare your comparables to someone else's, that is where the problem is, that they have not used good comparables for the said property. And so that's good if you can see what they've used. But like I said, and you've said, this market is different, and the appraisers are in a bit of a difficult position. And as I think we discussed last week, that they do want to try their hardest to make it work, but they can't, they work within fairly strict parameters as well. And they can't just appraise a house at any price. They have to be able to show how they appraise the home.
Yeah, one of the classic things is when you've got an appraiser that comes in, he probably is not aware of the different styles of homes in the area, may not know the difference between whether this is a track home or this is a custom built home. They may be identical in square footage and number of bedrooms and bathrooms and acreage, but one is a one-off build and the other one is a track home, and that's often where I've seen a challenge with matching them up. Any other thoughts on that? Okay, I'm not sure if we did this slide because the slides went a little bit crazy earlier on, but did I do this slide with you guys? I'm not sure if I did. We'll do it anyway, just in case. The purpose of a CMA is to establish an accurate range of value. I'm pretty sure we did this actually, but we'll go through it again. Property that seller wishes to sell or the buyer wishes to buy. Accurate range is one that reflects market conditions at the time of the place of transaction. After an accurate property value range has been determined, the CMA is used to help sellers identify an asking price and buyers identify an offer price. I'm sure we did that to the screen actually. And I think we did this one. Did we do this screen? Am I getting some nods on that? Okay, maybe we didn't. Sellers and buyers and real estate professionals all need to use the CMA. Let's take a closer look at each group's motivations for using CMAs and the benefits they derive from. So here we got a happy seller. And of course, every agent has a story or two about sellers who have overestimated the value of their home. They've already figured out. I think this market's even worse because for some reason, I think their value is escalating every week because they are thinking there's short of inventory out there and maybe my house is going to be worth a lot more than it is going to be. It's going to be worth more, but it's going to be worth a lot more. Anybody got that happening at the moment where they've got a seller who's just thinking it's going to be worth much more than it really is, even though it is going to be worth more than it would be being worth a year ago?
I have clients that mention their house is worth more than whatever. Obviously, my house is better than yours, but I do tell them, make it very clear that your house is worth what someone will pay for it, right, or what someone appraises it at, period.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I have found that also in this market, I think mostly sellers are understanding they're going to get top dollar for their home, but that top dollar keeps rising because they think the market's moving quicker than their mind is moving. So CMAs are really important to help, rein our sellers in to get a more accurate price. Many factors can contribute to this the misperception of value. Sellers might hear exaggerated sales amounts from neighboring homes through local gossip. That's often one of the platforms that comes in on how that rises their expectations. They might apply broad market trends and simplistic assumptions to come up with an unreasonably high value. They might believe that they can recoup all of the cost of their home improvement that they've made over the years. And maybe some of them can in this particular market, but the market won't always be like this. It will swing the other way. And then we have to deal with the other challenges that our sellers have. Perhaps above all, they attach a high value to their home based on their emotions and pride of ownership. Has anybody had to deal with that where someone is so emotionally connected to their property that they are struggling to figure out that they're not going to be able to sell it for that amount? Maybe not in this market, but in other markets. If we had a situation where we've had to deal with a client who's so emotionally connected to the property that they are seriously wanting much more than they are going to get for that property.
I have, and
share
yes, basically all of the things you outlined, my sellers have applied to their property, and they were about $100,000 over what the actual market was. And
that's a huge amount of money, isn't it?
Yes, and I told them, this is what, from my experience, your property is worth. And I explained what my experience was to them, because I used to be an architect. I used to be in the construction industry as a contractor, and now I'm a realtor. And looking at all of those factors and putting all of those things together, that's what the market is. And I gave them the feedback in regards to the and when there were showings and contacted by other realtors about what those comments were, and they said, no, 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 no. I had the house for about, well, I think it was 8 months on the market, kept going back to them, explaining the issues again, and they said no. Unfortunately, they had a loan that had to come up for renewal. So the house had to come off the market for that period of time, 30 days, 60 days. I can't remember what it was at that particular moment. In the meantime, they were going to rent the property out. my broker came up with a renter who wished to buy the property, and it just happened to be exactly what I gave as a CMA. They refused that price. They went with another broker who sold it for $45,000 less than what my broker had as a buyer and what my price was 90 days later.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a client very similar to that. And we knew they wanted too much, but it was a super nice home, but they wanted like at least, 30 grand more than it was really worth. And I think we did 2 or 3 different open houses. We just could not get people in there. And then we eventually got an offer that came in, which we said, hey, this is a good offer. And they rejected it. And they then, I guess they fired us. They went with another brokerage. And then we saw it sold for like 10,000 less than the actual offer they actually had in their hands. And I thought, there you have it. They lost out on that because I guess ultimately a pride of ownership. That's really what it was. And they could have definitely netted more money if they'd have taken the advice. And there's nothing we can do about that, is there, Paul? When that happens to us, it's just, we do our best. But we know that unless they've got a cash buyer who just falls in love with their house and pay whatever, they've got to get a mortgage, and a lender's got to be able to have it appraised. And so irrespective of how much they think it's worth, someone can't buy it unless they can get a loan for it. Very good.
Yes, I even suggested that they get an appraiser to come in and actually independently appraise the property. And they refused because they just didn't want to spend the money for the appraisal.
Yeah, they probably knew the appraiser was going to agree with you. They didn't want to pay the $400 or whatever it was to ask him. Yes, Leslie, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say, we had someone reach out to us that we represented them buying a home in Daybreak 3 years ago. And this couple lived in it for a short while, but they ended up having to move to Idaho, and he's been renting it out. And he purchased it for $285 3 years ago. It's in Daybreak. It's 2,300 square feet. It is completely finished, but it's on 0.6 of an acre. It's a nice home, but I wouldn't say it's anything fantastic. And I ran comps and got it to around 430, which I thought was an incredible increase or profit for them. And he said, I was hoping for like 1.1 million. And then he said, I'm joking. And I'm like, great. And then in the next text, he said, but I was thinking 550. And I'm like, there's no way that they're going to get, well, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. But I cannot see how they would get 550 for that home when I'm getting the comps at 120,000 less. So I've got to talk to them, because I may suggest that we get an appraisal out and get it appraised. The market is a moving market, and it literally can change from week to week, month to month. But I seriously do not, from the comps, there's no way I can get it to 550, especially. And I said to him, your biggest challenge is you're on such a small piece of land. I know Daybreak has great facilities, but at the end of the day, the comps will adjust the price, by a reasonable amount with the size of the land.
Yeah. And the other challenge is, irrespective of where we end up on the actually pricing the home, it's got to sell. And even if someone thinks the home's worth the money, if they can't get a loan, a mortgage to fund it, if it won't appraise for that amount, that they can't sell it anyway. And if they don't sell it, it's our fault. The client comes back and says, oh, you said we could, promote the house, market it at this price, even though we didn't. But yeah, it's a difficult platform, this is. But CMAs can be very helpful to at least curb some of the energy of our sellers that are expecting a little bit more than they're going to get for their home. Here are some other thoughts on the sellers. So CMA provides the data and reasoning to help sellers see not only the value of their home, but also why that value is accurate. And certainly when we can show a seller, the other homes that we're comparing with, that they can see those figures. It's quite detailed, and we can share that with them. Sellers who understand the objective logic for value in their home are more likely to list their home at an accurate price for its market. As a result, they are also more likely to sell their home quickly and efficiently. I know in today's market, it's just very unusual. They're probably going to sell their home anyway. Owners who are able to sell promptly avoid much of the stress and disruption of repeated showings of their homes. Certainly, when the market's the other way, this becomes very stressful when they're having to keep getting their home ready for people to come and show it, and they multiples of showings and no offers. If they're under pressure to move, for example, for a job or to downsize or to move to affordable home, an efficient sale saves them further anxiety. Anything else on the sellers here? One more here. Sometimes sellers undervalue their property, such as when an estimate is interested in, when an estate is interested in selling a home quickly to distribute the proceeds. If someone's passed on or whatever, they want to get it moving. Sometimes they can undervalue the property. CMA helps protect the sellers against undervaluating as well as overvaluating a home. Has anybody had an experience they like to share where they've had a seller that has been desperate to sell the home quickly and undervalue the property? And if that happens, how do we work with that? What's the benefit? There is a little bit of a benefit of doing that. Anybody got any thoughts on if we've got a property undervalued? Well, if it is undervalued, we're most likely going to get more than one offer, which should hopefully push the value up. That's the only benefit. But we may miss out on the bigger buyers that would give us more for the property. Any other comments on sellers and how we can help our sellers become more comfortable with our CMAs?
I've had a lot of people that, because the market's so hot right now, they don't want to use a real estate agent. They just want to do it themselves. And right now I'm working with a potential client. The husband passed away in December, and she's trying to sell this house they've lived in for 40 years. She has 11 children, and they are all trying to help her and trying to have a conference call with them to say, and they're thinking, oh, we can sell this on our own. And I'm going, you guys are really emotionally invested in this house. I want the best for them, and I want them to get the best that they can, but they're seeing, oh, well, I don't want to pay your commission, so I'll try and sell it myself. And I'm worried for the whole process for all of them in that whole thing. So it's been an interesting conversation as we're working on this together, but we'll see what happens.
That's a difficult one, Christy, because you've also got 11 players, and they're thinking whatever comes out of this home, eventually they're only getting 11. They're going to get 1/11th section of it. So they're thinking of themselves as well, which is difficult. Yeah, and you're right. At the moment, people are thinking, don't let's use a realtor. We can sell it ourselves. We'll sell it. And they're probably right. They are going to probably sell it. They'll sell it on their own. They're not going to have the protection that we can offer, and they're not going to have the smooth, transaction and transition of selling a property. But they could underprice it, even in this market. For a fast sale, they could underprice it. Who was it who just? Oh, it was you, wasn't it, Chris? You said that you had a client that. The appraisal came in much higher than your CMAs, so they don't have these tools, and they could end up thinking it's worth something, but it's actually worth more than the something they think it's worth. So yeah, we have to have that discussion with them. It is difficult. It is difficult in this particular market, and all we can do is share with them that we are a professional real estate agent. We're licensed, and we do have access to not only information to price a home, but we also have access to other people, other realtors that can help us as we strive our best to professionally support our clients. Any other thoughts or comments on the selling game, the seller, keeping our seller happy like that guy with the CMA? Okay, let's look at the buyers, shall we? Here we go. Keep our buyers happy. Buyers are often at a great disadvantage in knowing the market value of a home they want to purchase. So often they don't know what the value of homes are when they're looking to purchase. So first-time buyers might be especially naive about the many variables that affect the market. They're moving to a different location, even just to a bordering town. They could be unaware of local trends that differ significantly from those of their current neighborhood. So we can be helpful to our buyers. Let's look at another few pieces on the buyers here. CMA allows buyers to make offers based on objective data relevant to a specific market. Buyers are less likely to make a lowball offer in a competitive market, potentially losing the home to another buyer. And they are less likely to make a too high offer that eventually is scuttled because a lender won't offer a mortgage at that price. So our buyers, we can definitely school our buyers with a CMA, and they can definitely be more able to offer the correct price. Now, I know at the moment we all know it's a seller's market, and so we may have some buyers out there that are desperate to find a property but keep offering a lower than acceptable price. I think if a property is priced correctly today, you've probably got to offer a full price offer to get it. But if it's not correctly priced, we've got to be able to come up with a reason why we're going to do that low ball offer. Has anybody got any stories about buyers that are they just never want to pay the full price, and they always want to put a low offer in there, and you're representing them as the realtor, and you're having to do that, and any challenges that have come up taking that approach? I've always been amused when we've been representing a client who's got to sell their home, and at the same time they're buying a home. So we're representing them selling the home, and we're representing them buying the home. And sometimes we've had a client, they want the top dollar when they're selling that home. I mean, they seriously want their maximum price that they can dream up. So whatever comparables we come up with, they want the top of the range, put a little bit extra on top. And yet when we're going to look for homes to buy, they want the very lowest of price. In fact, they want to go under whatever price it is that the house is on the market for. And I find it frustrating when I'm dealing with someone like that, because ultimately they're not being fair. They know that they want the top dollar and they won't take anything less, but when it comes to buying a home, they want to lowball the offer, and then that's acceptable. Has anybody had any experiences like that where they've found it extremely difficult to work with a client, and how they've overcome those challenges? You're smiling, Paul. I can see you smiling. You must have a story in there for us.
Yeah, the biggest problem that I have are out of state or even out of community buyers. I have some buyers that come down here to St. George area, and they lived in Cedar, which is not that far away.
That's right. Yeah.
There was a significant difference in the home prices in St. George than Cedar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously those deal with schools and things of that nature.
Yeah, and we found when we lived in Harriman, you could just literally, you know, drive 2 or 3 miles into a different part of Harriman and find the market is very different to the area in which you're living in. So yeah, we have to be careful that we're offering the correct prices, but we've got to try and keep our buyers happy, and they've got to be able to trust what we are giving them as good information. Let's see if there's another one.
It actually,
Yes.
Harriman, it was not even that far. It was, in some situations, it was the neighborhood over where it was different.
Yeah, it was.
So a lot of diversity.
Yeah, it was. Here we are. Then we are. So yes, and they're less likely to overpay for a home, thus freeing up their financial resources for other important life expenses. So yeah, we can make our buyers pretty happy if we get this right. CMA, of course, is really good for the agents, which is us, to serve the best interests of their buyer and seller clients. Real estate agents need the CMAs. A well-researched CMA is a listing agent's greatest tool in pricing a home appropriately. A listing that is properly priced is more likely to sell quickly, and I like the word efficiently. Usually have less hassle on those. A listing that is overpriced will not be competitive in its market and will more likely languish out without offers. Overpriced, undersold listings are ultimately income killers for us, the agents, because if we overprice a home, we don't sell it, eventually we get fired, and they go to another agent, and the agent said, well, you were listing it too high. For some reason, that agent gets the deal, and we've done all the hard work. So we've all been there, and we've seen that happen as well in our business. Don't generate warm feelings and recommendations from clients. So very important CMA for us. A little bit more on agents. Complaints about incorrect pricing are among some of the top legal claims made against real estate professionals. I found that interesting. I don't personally know that. Steve Perry, are you still on this class? If you are, I think you may be able to give me some input on this, see how true this statement is. I'm not sure if Steve's with us. If he is there, he might be able to chip in on this one. Maybe he's not still with us, okay. But apparently that's one of the big complaints, is incorrect pricing.
I'm here.
Oh, yeah, Steve, have can you elaborate on that for us at all? Is that your experience, that you think the incorrect pricing from agents is a challenge with the Complaint Bureau?
Well, I'll tell you what, nowadays it sure is, because I mean, I even had a call last night from an agent saying we're $100,000 over asking, and we're just going to wait for the appraisal to fix it. And I was dying. I was like, we just can't be running our business this way. And so the economy is just so messed up right now with the way the sellers are acting, and appraisers need to get things under control. But yeah, it's not my favorite economy right now for legal issues.
Well, what's the best advice you can give us, Steve, when that lands on our doorstep and we have that situation? Because obviously our allegiance is to our client.
Yeah, I mean, I just keep going back to telling the agents to do your CMAs, to make suggestions to your clients, but the client has to make their choice. Protect the earnest money, because there's so many people putting hard earnest money down nowadays and getting rid of inspections and getting rid of appraisals, and it's just messing with everything. I had three calls yesterday from people. The sellers agents told the buyers agents, we're in a multiple offer situation, get creative with your highest and best offer. I'm like, we have a code of ethics for a reason, that we don't get creative. We put simple facts and numbers down. And, you know, it's just driving me nuts how, I don't know, how people want to get creative. I just keep looking back and having to go over everything. And I'm really happy the UAR put out that the new addendum, you know, making it easier for language so people aren't trying to become lawyers now with all these crazy addendums that happen and take place. It's just, but you gotta always have a baseline. You gotta have a ceiling. I mean, you gotta protect the earnest money. You still gotta do everything to protect your client. And then people are still just, you know, there's 20 offers or more and people are way 50,000 over. And it's just crazy. So I don't have any advice except for just try to do things the right way and protect your client through the contract the best that you can. So it's a Wild West, it feels like.
Wild West. Yeah, I think you're totally right. Our job is to be ethical ourselves in all that we do and do everything to protect our client and give them all the information and access to all the resources that we might have to help them. This next paragraph reads, when buyers feel that they've overpaid or sellers feel they're undersold in property transactions, they're apt to feel resentful, angry, and cheated, are likely to blame the professionals who guided them, including their real estate agent. That's basically what we're talking about here. So are we acting as a disclosed dual agent in a transaction? Let's make sure we get that right. Requirements are state specific, but if you prepare a CMA for a seller while acting as a disclosed dual agent, you should also do so for the buyer. Not doing so puts the buyer at a disadvantage. So let's make sure we keep ourselves ethical. And we have total control what we can do. You know, we don't have much control what other people do, but we can make sure that we are in line. Any other comments on agents and the CMA? Okay, let's just look at some quick advantages here for the sellers, of course. So you get those figures, their numbers or whatever for the CMA. They receive a fact-based, objective assessment of their home's value. That's what they get. They're getting some facts that they can work with. Sellers don't experience the stress and disruption that can occur when home languish on the market. Sellers are protected from undervaluing the home. And sellers avoid the delay that occurs when they accept a high offer and the property does not appraise for the offered price, which also can be a bit discouraging when that happens. So CMA can be very helpful to keep our sellers in check. Advantages for the buyers, looking at the same detail in a different way. They obviously can receive the fact-based objective information about their homes, which is especially important when they're not familiar with the local market of that area. Buyers are less likely to lose the home they really want because their offer is too low. Obviously in a different market there. Buyers are less likely to encounter problems obtaining a mortgage because the home appraises below the offer price, which I think could be quite common in today's market. Buyers are less likely to overpay for a home, thus preserving financial resources for other important life expenses. Maybe in this market, they might be overpaying for the home. Let's move on to the agents. Got the same graph, just understood a little bit differently. Obviously, listings don't languish, sapping agents' time and energy and income. And we've all been there and had that happen. Clients are less likely to feel resentful about and blame the agent for price they paid or received. If we can share the information with them, then they're less likely to blame us. Clients are more likely to be satisfied and recommend the agent's services to others. Any questions on that slide or comments? Very good. Let's move on to the next section. Fundamental principles for choosing comparables. General parameters for choosing comparables are determined by the subject home, subject's number of bedrooms, bathrooms, sizes, living space, lot, neighborhood, and school districts in which it's located, its age, condition. All these characteristics form the parameters for choosing comparables. Let's have a look at those. Of course, a comparable is never perfectly similar to the subject, but a central goal in preparing a CMA is identifying comparables that are as similar as possible physically, functionally, geographically to the subject. The more similar the comparable, the fewer adjustments you'll need to make, and the more accurately you can determine the value of the subject and price it correctly. So first of all, we've got the location. Make sure it's in the same subdivision if you possibly can. Same neighborhood. Usually 1/2 mile radius up to a mile radius in a city urban area. Same school district if schools are driving, forcing the market. Same complex for multi-family homes. And rural is generally around the 5-mile radius. Let me just go back to that one actually. Anybody got any questions on that slide on location? Okay, let's go on to date of sale. This is pretty important. Generally, guideline is that a comparable's date of sale should fall within 90 days of the CMA research. So about 3 months, we're trying to get it to fall within that. At the moment, you can probably let it fall within about 3 days because that's what's happening. Because it doesn't last very long and they're gone. But usually within a 90-day window. If no comparables are available, then you can reach back to 180 days. And if none come up there, you can go back as far as a year. Or in some cases, if you're dealing with obviously commercial properties, you may go back multiple years. Remember to be as accurate as possible. 90 days should be used if available. Any thoughts on the dates before I go on to the next one? Size. Okay, let's have a look at the sizes. Comparables should be the same size or close to the same size as the subject in terms of both living area and lot size. That's very important, particularly these days where you've got, in some cases, huge houses on very small lots. You're going to get a different price for a huge house and a big lot. And the same in reverse, where you've got a small house on a big lot or a small house on a small lot. The MLS CMA is set up to pull comps from 500 square feet smaller and 500 square feet larger. That's what it's set up to do. When doing a CMA, you should first try to bracket the subject property with one comp being a little smaller, one being a little larger, and one being as close to the property size as possible. So that's what we're trying to aim to do. Any other comments or questions on size? All right, let's go to the plan, the floor plan. Again, realtors should compare like properties to like properties. That's what we're trying to do. Ramblers should be compared to ramblers and two-story to two-story. How many times have we seen someone compare a rambler to a two-story or vice versa? Let's make sure we get the plan style of the home compared correctly. Any questions or comments on that slide? Oh, okay, here we got our next little keyword here, Merlin. You can figure out what this one's going to be. It's another C word. Characteristics will be that third keyword. Characteristics, which is CHARACTERISTICS. Characteristics will be that third keyword in this lesson material. Characteristics. All got that? I think you might have that by now. Characteristics. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at the age of the property. The MLS system will allow the comparables to be back 5 years in age and forward 5 years in age. That's really what they're after. Obviously, sometimes we can't do that, but we do our best with what we've got. So the subject property is built in 2000 and the comparables can be from 1995 to 2005. Sometimes that's not always possible, but if we can do that, we are going to get a better comparable. Any comments on the age? Okay. Oh, here it comes again. I must have pushed the wrong button up. There we go. What's the next one? Number of bedrooms and baths. Number of bedrooms and baths should be close to the subject property as possible. We're aware of that. The MLS will adjust if it isn't. And then we've got the garage size. Sometimes there's some confusion on this. So the number of garage doors is not necessarily the number of stalls that can be counted for value. This house may look like a 3 garage. I meant to say garage, actually. I know I said garage. Every now and then that English comes out of me, you know. The garage and the garage. So that end section, that actually could be a double stall. If that's a long section, then obviously it'd be a 4-car garage. So don't necessarily go by the shutters you've got. See how many stalls you can get there. And they need to be regular sized cars. You can't have, you know, little midget cars in there. It's got to be a proper car. But that makes a big difference on a CMA, is how many garages we have and what the size of them are. And also if they are just an extended size, because, you know, they can get longer trucks in there if they are. Any questions on the garage size? Okay. Other features, okay, amenities. Comparables should reflect the amenities or features of the subject as closely as possible. This is a broad category for comparing properties. Everything from lots to finished basements, soaker tubs to swimming pools, fireplaces to patios, security systems to solar panels. I know they don't really put solar panels on there or necessary security systems, but they are features. They are an extra benefit and they can make a difference on that comparative report. Find a comparable that exactly matches the subject in terms of amenities is unlikely. The goal is to identify comparables that are similar as possible. But this does make a difference, and the appraisers do take in consideration all of these areas. They have license to kind of figure out, well, I'll add a little bit extra for a, you know, a well-finished yard or swimming pools or whatever it may be. Any questions on that slide or comments? Okay, a few more here. So amenities are sensitive to changing demands and tastes, and their value to typical buyers varies from market to market. When you consider the importance of an amenity in pricing a property, you must think about whether it's of value today. You know, it may have been a value 20 years ago, but today it's not of value. And so think about that. Do you think the appraiser will consider as added value? And you probably all know personally an appraiser here and there. It's okay to give them a call and say, hey, I'm just working on a CMA here, and this particular home has some extra amenities, and I wonder whether or not you would take any of these in consideration if you were valuing a property. And often they'll say yes or no, or they'll give you some extra help. We've done that, and that's been helpful. Anybody got any stories or comments on reaching out to an appraiser, not one that's going to do the work of the home, but just someone you know who is an appraiser who might give you some pointers? Okay, well, if you do have a connection who is an appraiser, it's sometimes good to talk to them. I know, Leslie Ann, you've often spoke to one of our appraiser friends, haven't you, on just little things, and it's been helpful.
I have, yes, and he's always quick to tell me that it's just like the real estate market is changing, things are changing for them as well. It's a fluid situation, and so just because something worked a couple of months ago, those same principles may not apply right now. It's kind of like Steve said, it's not the most enjoyable market at the moment. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Leslie Ann. So yeah, if you've got a contact that you can reach out to, sometimes you can learn some little nuggets that are helpful in today's market. Okay, improvements. Comparable improvement should match the subject as closely as possible. That's what you're trying to do every time, as closely as possible. They can range from required maintenance to style updates to additions. Each home improvement may need to be evaluated for cost. When I say evaluated for cost, I'm not really saying evaluated on what it costed when it was done, but what the costs are value today is at. Remember that often about 50% of cost value is increased unless it is added to the total square footage. So we need to think about that. If they've spent X amount doing something, it's probably only worth half that amount now, depending on how long the house has been on the market, how long the house has been around since that improvement was done. And we just covered that item as well. Any comments on that slide? Okay. Let's see what else we got here. So there are some potential negatives, and we'll go through some of these. For example, busy streets, near busy or industrial district, irrigation, canal, railroad tracks, power lines, rundown neighborhoods, stop signs, fire hydrants, mailboxes, school bus pickups and drop-offs, parks and walkways. So we have to think about these. These could be negative, all right, but they could also be positive. You know, here we've got a home here and there's a little park right next to it. Now, if that home's got youngsters in there, or they're thinking of buying it, they've got youngsters, they may think, this is great for me, I love it. We'll buy the home because we've got a park just next door, literally. Or if it's maybe a family that's moving in that hasn't got young kids, you know, all the kids are, you know, teenager up or left, and they may be thinking this is a problem because it's just going to be a noisy little corner every time they wake up in the morning. So we have to think about what's going on and whether or not we can overcome some of those challenges. I know we sold 3 houses that were on the same road, all next to a stop sign. So it's like a T-junction. There's a stop sign there. And of course, the questions will come in. We don't like the house because of the stop sign. So I thought about it for a while. We decided we would tackle this stop sign. And the benefit, of course, having a stop sign there is the cars are stopping. So that's a good safety reason to be located by the stop sign. You know, it's going to be safe for your kiddies because the cars are always slowing down at this junction and they're going to stop. So that was a plus. And we found that as we had people that came in and talked to us about the stop sign, we were able to share with them the benefit of having the stop sign. Another one is a mailbox. Sometimes you've got a mailbox right outside your property. And of course, you know, you've got people coming in and maybe they're driving up their cars and always parking outside of the home. And you've got that may be a disadvantage to some people. They may not want that. I know where we lived, there was a mailbox just in the corner. It was like in an elbow, and people used to always park in there. And because it was a small elbow, the driveway for the house that was in the elbow only had a small entrance, and people would drive in and park right in front of their driveway and get out and get the mail. And of course, that was a challenge for some people. It so happened that the people who lived there, they were okay with it. But if someone was buying that home, that may be a negative for them. Does anybody have any other negatives that I have to deal with, apart from the ones I've listed there, that we might just highlight when we're trying to sell a home or buy a home?
I had a quick fun one. I was representing a blind client, and they wanted easy, very close access to Front Runner. And so where a train for most people would be a very negative thing in their proximity, he literally said, I need to be within 500 feet of a station of a train. And so it really changed the search that we had. But obviously, you know, using that for comparables is just kind of fun information.
Yeah, that's a great comment. That is, I've not thought of that one, Tyler. Yeah, that was important to him. For most people, they wouldn't want it close by, but he needed it close by because he couldn't see. That's a great one. So just be thinking about, you will have sometimes some negative items that come up. Just think about how you're going to deal with them, and if there are some plus and negs for them that you can share with your clients. Any other comments on that slide? All right, let's move on then. How many comparables should you identify for your CMA research? Answer is a range. So usually at least 3 or as many as needed that you can find that are appropriate for or to the subject. Ideally in your report, you'll want to have at least up to 3 to 6 that are comparable if that's possible. That's also helpful when you share it with your client because they can see that you've taken a range of properties that fall within some of those parameters we've talked about that can be helpful for them understanding that you have got a reasonable price for that subject property. States of these comparables should be sold. That's what we're trying after. Just be sold is ideal. Sometimes we can't always do that, and we have to, use listed items. But sold is the best if we can do that. Any comments on that previous slide? Okay, active listings. So active listings can be included in a separate section of your CMA to show the seller the supply and demand of competing properties. I think probably in this market, we probably are going to be showing those. This will allow the sellers to recognize what they're up against when competing for buyers' dollars in the price range. Oh, any other questions on the comparables before we go to the types of houses? We're on the last furlong in this little class here. Okay, let's look at some of these houses. Oh, yes, please.
Anyone had any experience in brokers comparable market analysis, or also known as brokers price options, and the acceptance by mortgage companies? I know it's a factor, but I've never had any experience in it myself.
I've not had experience in that. Has anybody here had an experience that could share with Paul?
So BPO is the same thing as what we've just gone over. And I mean, so here's a weird one. I just had Wells Fargo I was the selling agent, and I just had Wells Fargo, the appraiser for Wells Fargo called me up and said, well, due to COVID restrictions, I can't even come to the house. So can I use your pictures and can you give me a BPO of what you think the value is? And I said, sure. Guess what? It came in. And he was paid for that.
That's amazing.
Anyway, there you go.
That's amazing, Brandon. I bet you were quite pleased though, weren't you?
I was actually taken back and I'm like, are you serious? And he goes, yeah, trust me, they're paying me for you to do my work. He actually said that.
Wow.
He said, I'll review what you send me, but there you go. And I said, you realize I'm the seller's agent, right? And he goes, yep. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
But yeah, to answer the question, I don't know who asked it. A BPO is just a comparative market analysis, and they'll look at them, and it's typically used more in the refinance or second mortgage market than it is for an actual purchase or sell.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Is that helpful, Paul?
Yes, thank you. That it's nice to know that an appraiser actually asked you to do it.
And he also told him he was getting paid for it.
Yeah, it was more the requirement for Wells Fargo and their COVID restrictions. So I don't know.
Yeah, there are some benefits of COVID restrictions. Thanks for sharing, Brandon. All right, let's see now. I think we got through that one. And we got through this one. I think I went back a couple of slides, so I wasn't sure. Okay, types of house. This is fun. We'll finish off with this little section. I know when I first got into this industry, there were some of these types of homes that I didn't really understand. And that was probably because in England, they're slightly differently referred to with different names. We would never refer to a house as a single family home. That was quite amusing. Over there, they're either detached, semi-detached, terraced, town, you know, they're just, or standalone. They're completely different titles over here. So I had to learn these. So I thought we'd just go through these and see if we can make sure we know what we're working with, particularly when we're working on the MLS, because it doesn't actually carry all of these as separate areas. Some of these are grouped together. So let's first of all do the simple one, which is obviously the single family home. So independent residential structure that sits on its own land. That apparently is what a residential home is. Could be a rambler, could be a two-story, all right? But basically it's one piece of structure, not joined to anything else, sits on its own land, all right? Designed to be a single dwelling unit. Typically, the owner owns the structure and the land. Any comments on that? Or we all know what a single family home is? Good. All right. It does get a bit more complicated. Oh yeah. It also does have front and back yards. That was another thing I had to get used to over here, is yards. In England, we call them gardens. Be the front garden, the back garden. Over here, everything's a yard. The only yards we have over there is 36 inches, or the knacker's yard for the horses, or the commercial yards for the big the big heavy machinery. But over here, we got yards in the front and the back of the houses. So I had to learn that one as well. So that's what we got for the family home, the single family home. That's basically what we're looking at. That's basically what the description is. Oh, and usually has at least one garage or garage on the property, whether it's attached to the home or separate, but it will usually have a garage on the property. Any questions or comments or anything I've missed on that? Okay. Condo, right, short for condominium. Now we start to figure out some new things. So I'm going to load these in and then we'll just talk about it. So typically a large property complex divided into individual units and sold. Could be a smaller multi-level home attached to others. Defined by ownership, this is key. You only own the airspace within the walls of the dwelling. Everything else is jointly owned with the other condo owners. Often comes with many shared amenities and common spaces. I think there's one more. Usually includes a non-exclusive interest in certain community property controlled by a condominium management. So that's what a condo is. Anybody got any comments on that? Have I missed anything out, or have I got anything wrong there? The key thing here, I think, is it's owned, okay, but you only own the airspace within the walls of the place that you're in, your dwelling section. You're owning the airspace. You're not owning the bricks and mortar. That's jointly owned with the other condo owners. Are we good on that one? Okay. Let's go. Oh, there's one more. General requirement. Oh, yes, there is a general requirement to pay an HOA for properties upkeep with all condos, as far as I understand. So the next one is the duplex. Now, this one was totally new to me when I first came over here. So let's have a look at this. A resident with 2 living units, usually have one owner, but may be occupied by 2 households. Owners can live in one unit, rent out the other, or rent both units, or occupy both units. The 2 units always share a common wall, but the floor plan can vary. Anything to add to the duplex or any comments on the duplex? There's one more. Can be defined as either a single family attached or single family detached dwelling unit. Single family attached dwelling units are duplexes without a subdividing property line between the two units. So that's basically what we have for a duplex. Any questions on duplex or any comments or thoughts on duplex? You guys have got all this. Okay. Apartments. Let's look at these. So can be applied to any residential unit inside a building, including a house, a townhouse, large complex, residential building, high-rise buildings, and even condominiums where owners sublet their units. In general terms, apartments are rented, not owned. Now, we're never going to really be doing a CMA for apartments unless we're going to be selling it as a commercial platform, because these are usually rented. But it gives you an idea what they are. They're very similar ultimately to a condo, but obviously the people here are renting, not buying. Any questions on that or comments? Very good. Twin homes. Just incidentally, if that home was in England, that would be called a semi-detached house, because it's detached, but only semi-detached because the middle is joined. That's how their thinking power goes over there. That's called a semi-detached house. Anyway, so it's called a twin home. Twin homes in one structure, that's two homes in one structure, usually multi-floor homes that share one or two walls with adjacent properties, but have their own entrances. So they're kind of completely separate, got their own entrances. Could be a mirror image or not. This one is a mirror image, as you can see. Each owner owns their portion of the house and the lot underneath. I think there may be one more on this one. Unless constrained by community requirements, you can paint the structure and design the yard as you wish. So that's what we have as a twin home. You'll find on the MLS, it doesn't say search twin homes. That's something you would put in your agent comments, but it won't just search twin homes. Any thoughts or comment on that slide? Very good. Let's go to the townhouse. We do have these in England, townhouses. So I'm familiar with this. You own the structure and the property beneath, usually arranged in a row of identical houses that share walls on either side except the end units. And incidentally, the end unit, if it was in England, it'd be called a semi, because it'd be semi-detached, it would be that one on the end. But over here, it's called a townhouse throughout. You pay for the HOA to cover your costs and general maintenance, and generally complete freedom to control the interior of the home, but typically needs some sort of agreement or arrangement with the other owners or the community to change anything on the external structure of the building. So you can change the outside, but you may have to get some permission to do that. That's your townhouse. Any questions or comments on your townhouses? Okay. Mobile homes. Has anybody here sold a mobile home? Someone trying to come in?
One of our agents, she sells lots of them.
Sorry, Steve, did you say that one of your agents sells mobile homes?
Yeah, we have an agent out of our South Jordan office. She sells lots of mobile homes.
Ah, good. Well, you've obviously got the ones that are actually mobile, they do move around, and the others are just sort of static. But these are mobile homes. Is there a big market for that at the moment, Steve, or not?
Yeah, because first-time home buyers can get into them pretty easy. The problem is they're not treated like real properties unless they're on a foundation. And so you still have to treat them like buying a vehicle, a car. So we have different forms and different requirements.
Right. Okay, that's worth knowing. So yeah, the
Bev-
mobile home. Yes, so carry on.
I think Beverly's trying to say something, but I can't understand her.
We'll just give her a moment, see if she can tune in.
Beverly, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just wondering, on the townhouses, it mentioned that if you lived in an end unit, that it was considered different. What is the difference?
I think here in the US, they're just called townhouses, wherever they are in that run. I just mentioned that in England, we would call the N1 semi-detached.
So they do, on the MLS, there is a place to say if it's a mid townhome or an end townhome.
Oh, that's right, end townhome. Yes, that's correct.
And an end townhome is worth more because you're only sharing one wall, not both walls.
Yes, and you've probably got a little bit more yard space as well around that end lot. Very good. Okay, let's just load in this mobile home one. Obviously, sometimes called a park home or house trailer home, caravan, RV, residential caravan or motor home, usually built in a factory, transported either to a permanent or a temporary site. Unless you own the land, you'd rent the land to put your mobile home on. So, but it's nice to know we have got some agents that are doing that. I've never sold one, so there we have it. Let's move on to the last line here, which you can rent your mobile home and land to a tenant. So if you got one of these, you could rent both to a tenant. Any questions on the mobile home? And then finally, we've got this recreational section, which is on the MLS. So I've just put a note in here. Recreational land is property that is primarily used for recreation, enjoyment and pleasure, usually not land that is only being used as commercial timberland. Could be like an adventure park or land that is used for walking, biking, riding or whatever. There's not much on there, but they do have some items of recreational, depending on how wide you set your search. Okay, so today we've covered the UtahRealEstate.com. That's the place you go to get your CMA. And we also learned today that the cloud option is worth looking at. Hopefully you'll have a look at that. And thank you. I think it might have been Cindy who shared that with us. We've looked at the summary of Article 11.1, gone through that in some detail, talked about the purpose of the CMA, who needs a CMA, the advantages for the buyers and the sellers, and of course, fundamental principles and comparables. We've talked about the characteristics of the comparables and also the number of comparables needed. And finally, we've looked at the different types of houses that we're working with. Hopefully you've gained something from this morning's class. I'm very grateful to those of you who have contributed. Always grateful to hear your stories, grateful to share your remarks, your experience and your thoughts, which are always appreciative on these Raising the Bar classes. If there are any other questions, now's the time to ask them, or any other comments. Other than that, we shall wrap up this lesson. Let you have a great week. We are doing tomorrow Raising the Bar in the afternoon between 1 and 3, and that will be on the disc. That's on the personality traits or styles, and we'll go through that in some detail. So those of you who have not been on that course, it might be worth looking at. It's very good. We'll be looking at the 4 different platforms of characters. Hopefully can help you read better your clients and customers.
I have a comment.
Yes, thank you, Michael.
Stephen and Leslie Ann, I appreciate this for the training. I obviously don't work with you guys, but I appreciate your help. And Leslie Ann did call me last week, try to recruit me. But I'm really happy where I am and the people I'm with. So, but I wanted to thank you guys. You do an excellent job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. We're always great for your comments. We're also great to have you on board, as we are to have any agents from any brokerage join us on these classes. We're all together. We're all in the same industry. And, you know, the industry should be a family of good, ethical realtors. You've all got experience, and we surely appreciate you being with us. Thank you, Michael. So I just asked Eslian to wrap this up and just go through the final bits and pieces. I'll just put a note at the bottom on this screen. Please contact me if for some reason your hours are not banked. Sometimes they don't bank, and there are reasons beyond what I can figure out because I put your information in correctly. But if they don't bank correctly, then we have to contact the division, let me know about that. And also if you have any good suggestions that can make these classes better, and then please send them to me at that email address. Leslie, over to you.
Okay, so I did just put the link in again, the Google form, if you could fill that out. If possible today, so we can clear the form for tomorrow's class. And if for some reason you missed a keyword, I'm going to put my cell phone number here to everyone, that is. Feel free to text me or call me and I will help you out. So yeah, have a great day. And like Steve said, there's another class tomorrow. The Raising the Bar gets taught on a Tuesday 10 to 12 and a Wednesday 1 to 3. There is an exception in a couple of weeks where the Wednesday class is being taught on a Monday because of we're not around on the Wednesday. But if you check out our calendar, which you can find on our site, and an email will be coming out to all agents, not just Presidio agents, with our April classes soon that you'll be able to sign up for. So anyway, that's it. Have a great day, and let me know if you have any questions.